think I just had a conversation this morning with a large insurer, literally right before we got on the phone. And I asked how things were going because cyber insurance is kind of complicated. He actually said things are getting better. Ransomware has been going down. We've actually been able to take rates down. And he actually had just given a speech on ransomware, what's next after ransomware. And the conversation was they're starting to see privacy fines creep up. They're starting to see compliance fines creep up. And they're also recognizing that they're living in a world of it's not if you'll be breached, it's not when you'll be breached, it's now how often. And if you have to insure against a how often conversation, it's no longer a black swan that happens once every 6 years. It's something that's happening every 4 to 5 weeks. And if I got to manage the cost the way that I manage the black swan event, I'll be out of business quickly. And insurers are going to start cracking down. It's like you live in the side of a riverbank and you get flooded every 3 weeks. You're going to have a different level of risk than somebody that's sitting on top of a mountain for flood insurance. So they're starting to recognize that the how often conversation, you need to address the cost of dealing with an incident, which means know what your access is, know how much data you have, know what sensitivity is. So when the incident happens, you can quickly say, how bad was it? And you'll say, I know exactly how bad it was. That alone will save you millions of dollars of just trying to figure out how to answer that question. So as we trend through this year into next year, bad guys will continue to proliferate, but there's also a bunch of good guys. I don't want people thinking that the privacy regulations are bad. They're very well intended, but when you try to legislate stuff like that, it gets very, very hard. So the intention is the right intention, and that's to make sure that we don't have to deal with some of the scenarios that we laid out on this podcast. However, how it gets implemented can be very cumbersome and very confusing. And I would say those that strive to just be compliant are going to totally spend way too much money and probably be worse off for it versus those that are focused on, it's my job to understand why I'm collecting the data that I'm collecting. And if I shouldn't collect it, then for the love of God, don't. Nothing's worse than that form that asks for 700 fields and they only need 2, right? So minimize what you're going to collect to begin with. Once you've minimized what you've collected, understand how it flows through your organization and understand the associated protections. And then my last passionate plea is when you don't need it anymore, delete it. If the records retention law around employee records is 10 years, on the year 10 year and 1 day, forensic, right? Do not keep data longer than you need because that's the big debt, the big data debt, the big toxic buildup of all of this data that we are just so afraid to get rid of. When the retention date expires, we need to get much more comfortable getting rid of it. And we need to get very comfortable, even if we find on your laptop 10 million credit card numbers, sorry, I don't care how bad you need it, it's gone. Because the risk of it being there is way, way higher than the risk of you saying, I kind of needed that file for some stuff. You can usually replicate it. We've all had tragedies where we've lost data and we usually survive. You might not survive somebody getting their hands on 10 million credit card numbers that's critical to your business. So that would be my passionate plea over the next couple of years. Get started, I guess would be the last thing that I leave people with. People get paralyzed when they look at the order of magnitude of how much data they have, how quickly it changes. Oh my goodness gracious, legal cares and compliance cares and privacy cares and IT cares and security cares and it's marketing data. I need to get everybody in the room to figure this out. And they just get paralyzed, so they don't do anything. Get started. This is a journey. This is not a one-time scan a thing and done. This is a continual journey, just like identity. So make sure that you get started on the journey and don't get paralyzed by the order of magnitude. There's easy places to start and start reducing risk now. So that's where I'd like to leave it. Get started. Start solving for the problem. The longer you avoid it, the worse it's going to go ahead and get.